Okay, so picture this, Daniel. Just a regular guy, working the morning shift at a downtown diner. 1 minute, he's wiping down sticky tables, the next, screams are erupting from the street. He runs to the window, and it's chaos. People running, not from something, but towards other people, biting, tearing. It wasn't panic, it was hunger. A raw, guttural hunger. He saw his boss, Mr. Henderson, the guy who always slipped him extra tips, tackling a customer, gnawing at their neck like a rabid dog. Henderson's eyes were milky white, his skin gray and mottled, and a low, guttural moan escaped his throat. Daniel slammed the diner door shut, heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. He could hear the pounding starting on the glass, a splintering sound that promised no escape. He scrambled into the kitchen, the smell of burnt coffee now mixed with something foul, something metallic and sickly sweet. This wasn't a riot, this wasn't a disease he'd read about. This was something else. Something ancient and terrible had awoken. He made it out the back, through a cramped alleyway choked with overflowing bins. The sounds of the city were a symphony of horror, shrieks, roars, the sickening crunch of bone. He saw a woman, her face half-eaten, dragging herself towards a group of fleeing survivors, her arms outstretched, not in a plea for help, but in a desperate lunge for flesh. He stumbled, his foot catching on something slick and warm. He looked down, and it was a severed hand, still twitching faintly. Bile rose in his throat. How could he even think about food when this was happening? His stomach churned, not from hunger, but from sheer, unadulterated terror. He had to keep moving, but where? Every street was a nightmare, every shadow a potential threat. The realization hit him like a physical blow, he was utterly alone, and the world he knew was gone, devoured by these things. It was a terrifying, suffocating loneliness that pressed in on him, heavier than any weight he'd ever carried. He found himself crouched behind an overturned car, the metal still radiating a faint warmth from the sun. The shuffling, moaning sounds were getting closer. He could see them now, shambling figures with vacant eyes and tattered clothes, their movements jerky and unnatural. One of them, a young woman who looked vaguely familiar, her dress torn and stained, lurched past, her jaw hanging open, a wet, clicking sound emanating from her throat. He remembered seeing her at the bakery down the block. What would you do if you saw someone you knew, someone you liked, turned into that? Would you try to help them, or would you run? He pressed himself further into the shadows, the cold metal of the car digging into his back. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that a single mistake, a single sound, would be the end. He just had to survive this moment, then the next, and the next. It was the only thing he could control. This is probably going to be the only record of what happened. If anyone finds this, please, just, try to stay safe. And if you do find this, maybe hit that subscribe button, just in case. And a like wouldn't hurt either. It's the least you can do. For me. For all of us. The silence was the worst. It pressed in on him, a physical weight that made it hard to breathe. He stayed frozen, listening. The crunch of leaves, a distant snap of a twig, each sound amplified in the stillness. He imagined the hunters, their faces grim, their eyes scanning the undergrowth. He had to move, but where? Every direction felt like walking into a trap. He shifted his weight, a single, agonizing inch. His boot snagged on something. A root? No, too smooth. He risked a glance down. A discarded canteen, dented and tarnished. Not his. Someone else had been here. Or was still here. He forced himself to breathe, shallow, silent breaths. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows that distorted familiar shapes. Soon it would be dark. Darkness was both a blessing and a curse. It would hide him, but it would also make it harder to see his own path, to avoid the unseen dangers. He thought about the others. Were they safe? Had they made it to the rendezvous point? He'd been separated in the chaos, a panicked scramble through the trees. He cursed his own clumsiness, the split-second hesitation that had cost him his companions. A rustle, closer this time. Not the wind. His heart hammered against his ribs. He pressed himself deeper into the dense foliage, trying to disappear. He could hear them now, their voices low, guttural. They were searching. Methodically. He squeezed his eyes shut, picturing the escape route they'd planned, the hidden paths that would lead them away from the patrols. He had to trust that they remembered, that they were following it. He crawled forward, inch by agonizing inch, his hands and knees scraping against the rough ground. The undergrowth tore at his clothes, but he barely felt it. His focus was solely on putting distance between himself and the sounds of pursuit. He reached a small clearing, bathed in the dying light. It offered no cover. He had to cross it to get to the denser woods on the other side. He took a deep breath, then another, trying to calm his racing pulse. He pushed himself up, ready to run, when a shadow detached itself from the trees opposite him. It was one of them. Tall, silhouetted against the twilight. They stood for a moment, and he knew he'd been seen. There was no escape. He braced himself for the shout, for the explosion of sound that would signal the end. But the figure didn't shout. Instead, it raised a hand, palm outward. A gesture he recognized. Not a threat. A signal. Hope, a fragile, flickering thing, ignited within him. He hesitated, then slowly, tentatively, raised his own hand in return. The figure turned and melted back into the trees, not in pursuit, but as if leading the way. He followed, a cautious, hopeful step into the deepening gloom. Okay, so here we are, in the middle of nowhere, basically. Like, truly middle of nowhere. I was driving, just trying to get away from the city. Seemed like the smart thing to do, right? Cities are where things get crazy. But then, well, then I saw it. A farmer, out in his field. He wasn't farming. He was, gnawing. On something. And it wasn't a sheep. It was his wife. I saw her legs sticking out of the mud. And he was just tearing at her, with his teeth, like a wild animal. My stomach just about did a flip. I slammed on the brakes, swerved onto the shoulder, and just stared. Then another figure shuffled out from behind the tractor. And another. They were slow, but they were coming. Towards me. My first thought, honest to God, was, what the actual hell? Then it was, get out of here. I spun the wheel, tires kicking up gravel, and floored it. Rearview mirror was my best friend and worst enemy. I saw that farmer, and the others, just keep going, uncaring of the car. It was like they were programmed for one thing. But the sheer, wrongness of it. The sounds. Not screams, not exactly. More like guttural moans, choked gurgles, and then that awful tearing. It's the sound that gets you. It's the sound of humanity just, gone. Replaced by something primal and vile. I drove for hours, not knowing where I was going, just away from that image, that sound. Every patch of woods, every dark silhouette by the roadside, made my heart jump into my throat. Then I saw the car wreck. A family car, flipped on its side. And around it, a few more of them. They weren't even trying to get into the car anymore. They were just, milling around. But one of them was small. A child. And it was doing the same thing. That awful gnawing. It's like the world just decided to flip a switch, and everyone good, everyone normal, just, broke. It's the not knowing that's the worst. Is it a sickness? Is it some kind of curse? And why them? Why the ones who looked so, vacant? I couldn't stop. I couldn't help. The thought of getting out, of approaching them, was pure terror. And honestly, they looked so far gone, what could I even do? I pulled over again, deeper into the countryside now. This time, I turned off the engine and just sat there, the silence deafening. The sun was starting to dip, casting long, creepy shadows. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. And the silence wasn't silent. It was filled with the echoes of what I'd seen. The images kept replaying in my head. The farmer. The child. The vacant eyes. I felt this overwhelming urge to just scream. To just let it all out. But who would hear? And more importantly, who would answer? I didn't dare to make a sound. I just sat there, huddled in the car, the fear a cold, heavy blanket, wondering if I was the last sane person left on earth. And if so, how long until the monsters found me? The fear was a constant companion, a knot in my stomach that never loosened. Every creak of the car, every rustle of leaves outside the window, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I'd been hiding in this abandoned vehicle for what felt like days, though the sun had only set and risen a few times since I'd seen them. The farmer, his face blank, moving with a terrifying aimlessness. The child, a tiny, broken thing, mirroring his father's vacant stare. It was the blankness that got to me the most. The complete absence of anything human. I needed water. My throat was drier than the dust coating the car's dashboard. Carefully, I eased the door open, the metal groaning in protest. The air outside was still, heavy with that same unsettling quiet I'd noticed before. No birdsong, no insects buzzing. Just the sound of my own ragged breathing. I scanned the desolate landscape, a patchwork of dry fields and skeletal trees. A small, dilapidated farmhouse stood in the distance, smoke lazily curling from its chimney. Smoke meant someone was there. Someone alive. Hesitantly, I moved towards it, my senses on high alert. Every step felt like a gamble. As I got closer, I heard a faint humming. A woman's voice, singing a nursery rhyme, off-key and mournful. It was the most beautiful, and terrifying, sound I'd ever heard. Peeking through a grimy window, I saw her. An elderly woman, sitting by a hearth, stirring a pot. Her face was weathered, lined with a lifetime of stories, but her eyes were clear, sharp. She looked up then, as if sensing my presence. She didn't scream. Didn't flinch. Just watched me. I pushed the door open, my heart pounding. "Hello." I managed, my voice raspy. She just nodded, a small, knowing smile touching her lips. She beckoned me closer. The pot on the fire smelled of herbs, earthy and comforting. She ladled some into a chipped mug and handed it to me. The water was warm, infused with something that soothed my parched throat and settled my racing heart. "They're gone," she said, her voice a low rumble. "Most of them. The ones who changed." She looked at me, her gaze penetrating. "You're one of the lucky ones. Still you." I didn't understand, not fully, but a sliver of hope, fragile as a moth's wing, began to flutter within me. She offered me a place to rest, to eat. And for the first time since it all began, I didn't feel entirely alone. The smell hit me first. A thick, coppery stench of blood, mixed with something else, something rank and decaying, that clawed at my throat. I was on Elm Street, or what used to be Elm Street. Now it was a charnel house. The vibrant paint on the houses had peeled and cracked, stained with dark, sticky patches. Cars were overturned, windows shattered, a chaotic tableau of destruction. I'd been trying to get to the old supermarket, hoping for anything, a can of beans, a bottle of water, anything to break the gnawing hunger. Then I saw them. Not just one or two, but a shambling horde. Their skin was a sickly gray, pulled taut over bone, eyes vacant and milky. They moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, their mouths gaping, emitting guttural moans. One of them, a woman I recognized, Mrs. Henderson from 2 blocks down, lunged at a man trying to hide behind an overturned car. Her teeth, a sickening yellow, tore into his arm. He screamed, a raw, animalistic sound, and I watched, frozen in horror, as the flesh ripped away. It wasn't just the gore. It was the sound. The wet, tearing noises, the gurgling screams that turned into sickening moans. My stomach churned, and bile rose in my throat. I wanted to run, to scream, to disappear, but my feet felt rooted to the pavement. This was real. This wasn't a bad dream. My mind, still reeling from the initial chaos, struggled to process what I was seeing. These weren't just sick people, they were something else, something fundamentally wrong. I ducked behind a rusted mailbox, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The woman who had offered me shelter, the one who had pulled me from that alleyway, she hadn't explained much, just that she knew how to survive. "They're not people anymore," she'd whispered, her voice rough, when I'd asked about the screams. "You gotta be smart. And quiet." The memory of her words, her calm despite the inferno we'd witnessed, was a stark contrast to the panic clawing at me now. I needed to get moving, to get away from this street, away from them. But where? Every street seemed to lead to more of the same, more death, more of the monstrous hunger. The fear was a cold, suffocating blanket, and the gnawing emptiness in my stomach was nothing compared to the void opening up in my soul. I pushed myself up, my hands scraping against the rough pavement. The stench of decay was everywhere, a thick, cloying miasma that made my eyes water. I didn't have a plan, just a desperate need to put distance between myself and whatever had just happened. I stumbled down the nearest alley, the sounds of the street fading behind me, replaced by the frantic pounding of my own heart. Rats scurried in the shadows, their eyes glinting like malevolent jewels. I tried not to think about them, tried not to think about anything beyond the next step. The alley opened onto another street, this one quieter, but no less unsettling. Buildings stood empty, windows like vacant eyes staring out at a dead world. A child's tricycle lay overturned in the middle of the road, a splash of faded primary colors against the gray asphalt. It was a reminder of what had been, a life that was no longer. I felt a phantom ache in my chest, a dull throb that mirrored the emptiness inside me. I kept moving, my eyes scanning every doorway, every darkened window, searching for any sign of safety, or at least, a moment's respite. Then I heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible sound, like distant singing. It was too soft to be a threat, too melodic to be the guttural groans of the infected. Hope, a fragile, almost forgotten sensation, flickered within me. I edged towards the sound, my senses on high alert. It led me to a small, overgrown courtyard behind a crumbling apartment building. In the center, bathed in the dim light of a sliver of moon, sat a woman. She was older, her face etched with lines of weariness, but her eyes held a strange, unwavering calm. She was humming a simple tune, her fingers busy with some kind of mending. She looked up as I approached, and for a moment, I thought she would be afraid. But her expression remained placid. She gestured for me to sit, a silent invitation. I hesitated, my instincts screaming caution, but something about her presence was disarming. I sat on the edge of a broken fountain, my body still trembling. She didn't ask any questions. She just continued her work, the soft melody of her humming filling the quiet air. It was a small comfort, a tiny island of peace in the chaos. I watched her, the repetitive motion of her hands, the gentle rhythm of her song. It was like watching a ghost, or perhaps, the last vestige of humanity. As the night deepened, so did the silence. The sounds of the city, even the distant groans, seemed to have receded, leaving only us and the faint chirping of crickets. I finally managed to speak, my voice raspy. Are there others?" I asked, the words feeling foreign and clumsy. The woman paused her humming and looked at me, her gaze steady. She smiled, a faint, knowing smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We endure," she said, her voice low and soft, like the rustling of dry leaves. "We endure, and we remember." The words hung in the air, a fragile promise, or perhaps, a quiet acceptance. I didn't know what it meant, not really, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sliver of something other than fear. It was too early to tell if it was hope, but it was enough to keep me breathing. Thank you for joining us on this journey. As we've seen, survival is not just about the immediate struggle, but about the enduring spirit within. The resilience shown in the face of unimaginable circumstances is a testament to humanity's innate drive to persist. Each story, from the quiet resolve in the face of overwhelming odds to the small acts of defiance that kept the flicker of civilization alive, underscores a profound truth: we are capable of more than we often believe. Remembering these moments, the sacrifices made and the lessons learned, is vital. It fuels our preparedness and reminds us of the strength we carry, even when the world feels irrevocably broken. In moments of sheer terror, when the very fabric of reality seems to unravel, maintaining composure is paramount. Panic is a luxury we cannot afford. Think of those who found solace in routine, who continued to tend to their small plots of land or meticulously ration supplies, not out of blind hope, but out of a disciplined need to preserve order. This mental fortitude, this ability to focus on the next achievable task, is a powerful tool. Always have a plan, even a simple one. Knowing what to do next, however small the action, can anchor you when everything else is in chaos. Our stories have illustrated the quiet heroism in simply choosing to live, to adapt, and to care for one another. It's in these shared burdens and small victories that true strength is found. Never underestimate the power of community and the comfort of a shared purpose. As you go forward, always remember the importance of self-reliance. Learn basic skills: how to purify water, how to identify edible plants, how to create a safe shelter. These practical abilities, combined with an unwavering mental discipline, form the bedrock of preparedness. We hope these narratives have offered some perspective and perhaps even a sense of shared experience. The world as we knew it may be gone, but the human spirit endures. Stay vigilant, stay prepared, and most importantly, stay calm. If you found value in these tales and the lessons they hold, please consider subscribing to our channel and leaving a comment. Your engagement helps us continue to share these vital stories and lessons. Thank you for watching.